but we got another very special guest joining us on the line right now. He's the former governor of the great state of Missouri. He's running for U.S. Senate there. Eric Greitens, Governor Greitens, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us again on Breitbart News Saturday.
Matt, so good to be on with you and your awesome listeners, man. Thanks for continuing the fight.
Yeah, so Governor, there's some real serious things happening in the world right now. The president, as we were talking about just before the break, has just called off his latest attempt to slip out to vacation again. He was scheduled to leave at 12:05 p.m. today. By the way, the press's bags were packed. They were at the airport waiting for the president there minutes ago, and now they just called it off again because now the U.S. Embassy in Kabul has said that American citizens should not go to the airport, directly undercutting President Biden's message yesterday that the Taliban checkpoints along the way to the Kabul airport were going to allow Americans through. They're now saying that it's unsafe to make the journey. What are your thoughts on everything that's happening there? As a Navy SEAL, you served overseas. This must be really disheartening for you.
Yes, Matt. Look, I was honored to serve our country as a Navy SEAL, honored to do 4 deployments, including 1 to Afghanistan. Obviously, lost friends over there, worked with a lot of returning veterans who sacrificed tremendously in Afghanistan. And what we are seeing here, Matt, is a complete dereliction of duty, absolute and utter confusion on the part of the Biden administration. They have yet again created a crisis. And, you know, Matt, if we pull back, as you so often do, and just give our listeners a kind of strategic view of what is happening, what's happening right now is that you're seeing yet again another manifestation of Joe Biden's policy of weakness. You've seen it here at home with violence rising in the inner city. You've seen it on the border where he's turned our border over to Mexican drug gangs and cartels. You've seen it in America's energy policy where he's out begging OPEC to increase oil production. And now you're seeing it in Afghanistan. You contrast that with President Trump, who not only pursued an America First policy, but also pursued a peace through strength policy. What did that do? It meant that we put an end to endless wars. It meant that we killed terrorists like Qasem Soleimani. It meant that we defeated ISIS. It also led to historic peace accords for which President Trump should receive the Nobel Prize between Israel and other nations in the Middle East through the Abraham Accords. The contrast could not be starker. The only people who win from Biden's incompetence and dereliction of duty are the Taliban, Russia, and China.
Right, and so so Governor, I want to get into why China and Russia, and yes. By the way, also one of your opponents in his ties to let's just put it this way, the bad Eric. There's 2 Erics running for Senate in Missouri. There's a good Eric. We're talking to the good Eric right now. Then there's a bad Eric. We'll talk about him in a minute. But I want to talk a little bit about what's happening on the ground in Afghanistan, because I think this is important that we drill down on this a little bit. President Biden has been gaslighting the American public into believing that this is a debate about whether or not we should leave Afghanistan. I think that debate was settled. President Trump had us on a pathway to withdrawal too. I talked to Secretary Pompeo last night, who was leading these negotiations. In fact, I went with Secretary Pompeo less than a year ago on the 19th anniversary of September 11th to Doha, where he met with Baradar, who is the head of the Taliban, as well as the Afghan government, which is now fallen, as part of the intra-Afghan peace talks. We talked to him about this. He laid out how under Trump we had reduced forces by 80%. And we were on a pathway to full withdrawal by the spring of this year. But it didn't need to be this way. So again, right. This whole debate of whether or not, which Biden's trying to put forward, is trying to say that if we didn't do it Biden's way, we weren't going to do it at all. That's not true. There's a better way to withdraw, and we could have done that under President Trump, which is you get the civilians out first. The fact that they left 10,000 plus American citizens there behind, abandoned, is abhorrent. But also, you get the weapons out. You don't leave the weapons behind for the Taliban either. So, what are your thoughts on that effort by Biden to gaslight the American people into believing that this is a debate about whether or not to withdraw? And again, is there a better way to have done it than what President Biden has done?
Yeah, such important questions, Matt. So, first of all, yes, absolutely. You put your finger on it. This is President Biden trying to distract from his utter and complete failure as commander in chief. He has a duty to the American people. He has a duty to our troops. He has a duty to the civilians on the ground, and he has failed. Matt, you and I could have gotten together a group of second graders, and we could have said, hey, if you were going to leave a place, would you want to leave with your civilians first, or would you take the military out and leave all of the civilians behind? This is obvious. You say, would you get the weapons out so that you're not leaving them for your enemies? This is obvious. These failures are now so obvious to every person across the country that we need to have leaders at all levels stand up and say no more. We are not any longer going to allow the leftists to continue to endanger the American people. That's what they're doing in Afghanistan. That's what they're doing here at home. And to your question, Matt, is there a better way? Was there a better way? Absolutely. President Trump had a plan. A number of national security officials have come forward to talk about that plan and the fact that that plan was not followed. Instead, you had the complete incompetence and failure that you're seeing from Joe Biden.
Right. And now, so Governor, the other thing about this is that you've got the serious miscommunication happening from the Biden administration across the board. Yesterday, the president said a number of things that were not true and that the Pentagon contradicted him on minutes later. First and foremost, he said that Americans can get to the airport safely and the Taliban isn't causing them any problems. We know that that's not true because we know that the Taliban has been beating Americans on their way to the airport. Now we see the latest from the embassy, by the way, this morning, where they're telling people not to go to the airport because it's not safe. The second thing that President Biden said that was untrue was that there is no Al-Qaeda left in Afghanistan. Now, the Pentagon later came out and said that that's not true, that there is Al-Qaeda left in Afghanistan. Now, to be fair to President Biden, Al-Qaeda has been severely decimated in Afghanistan. They're nowhere near where they were 20 years ago when we went in. We got rid of a lot of them, and I talked to Secretary Pompeo about this last night. He said there's about 200 of them left, but that's 200 terrorists, right? Like, and that number is going to proliferate now that the Taliban is going to provide a safe harbor for them, most likely, as time goes on here. But they're, for the most part, their headquarters elsewhere throughout the Middle East, Yemen, Tehran, etc. But the point there is that they're not gone. We've also seen contradicting communications between the State Department, the White House, and the Pentagon. They're all on different pages. They're all saying different things. What do you think about this misinformation that's coming from the Biden administration? If they can't get the message straight, if they can't get the details right, as they're going out there to communicate to the American public, it makes you wonder if they can get the mission right.
Well, that's right. Not only does this point to their failure to speak coherently, it points to their failure to think coherently. It points to their failure to put together and execute a strategy that would involve the Pentagon, the State Department, the CIA. What you see very clearly is incompetence at every level in the Biden administration. And unfortunately, we're seeing it not just in Afghanistan. We're seeing it here at home. We're seeing it on the southern border. And you're so right, Matt, to point out the fact that they can't even get clear messages, potentially life-saving, life-threatening messages right between the American embassy, the Pentagon, the White House, and the State Department shows just how incompetent and confused the Biden administration is.
Right. So now, Governor, this is why I think elections have consequences, because who we send to Washington to represent us in the United States Senate, in the United States House, who we elect as governors, and again, who we elect as president, really has a consequence on all of these things and more. Now, a really good example of this is Tennessee, where we just had on Senator Hagerty last hour. There were a lot of people like, the Senator Cruz and whatnot that were pushing his primary opponent, they were wrong. I mean, pretty clearly. I mean, Senator
Mm-hmm.
Hagerty's been a great senator now. So you're in a primary right now in the state of Missouri. You're leading in the polls, but there, as we mentioned there a minute ago, there's another Eric. So, like I said, there's a good Eric. That's who we're talking to right now, Eric. Eric Greitens, the former governor. There's a bad Eric, Eric Schmidt. He's the Attorney General of Missouri. Now, Eric Schmidt, when he was in the state legislature, he was in the state Senate. This is a headline I have from 2018, so it's not that long ago. Or sorry, from
Mm-hmm.
2011, but it was updated in October 2018. Not that long ago. Headline from Darren Corrigan, columnist for the then columnist for the Webster Kirkwood Times. Senator Schmidt, major force behind China hub. So this guy,
Mm-hmm.
so China, as we're seeing now, is going to be the beneficiary of all of this stuff that's happening with the Taliban and so on and so forth. They're going to benefit from this. We're seeing Biden sell out to the Chinese Communist Party. This guy, literally, when he was in the state legislature, helped the Chinese Communist Party in a significant way in Missouri. I think that's a defining issue in this race. Can you talk to us a little bit about this?
Yeah, absolutely. That is a defining issue in this race. One of the reasons why I am dominating this race, Matt, is because I am the America First candidate, and we're going up against weak, woke Republicans who do not stand up for the people of Missouri. They do not stand up for the American people. What you're pointing to is just one example where you have politicians engaged in these special interest tax credit programs designed, in this case, to benefit the country of China rather than the United States of America. These same politicians pushed legislation to allow Missouri farmland to be sold to Chinese Communist Party-owned companies. It is disgusting. We have to have leaders who are willing to stand up and fight for the American people, who are willing to stand up against lobbyists, who are willing to stand up against the Chinese Communist Party, who are willing to stand up against the rhino establishment that continues to stab the American people in the back. I'll tell you this, though, Matt. The people of Missouri, they are not fooled. We've been doing events all over the state, hundreds of people coming out. They are fired up. They're ready to take on the mainstream media. They're ready to take on the left, and they are ready to send a message to these weak, woke Republicans that we need fighters, and that's what I'm going to do, Matt. I'm going to go and fight for the people of Missouri in the U.S. Senate.
Right. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. In all of these issues, I mean, whether it be this monstrosity disaster of a infrastructure bill that they pass out of the U.S. Senate. We call it a hoax, right? Like we call it a hoax, or because it's not really infrastructure, right? Like, and then
Not
there's
even
the third.
close, yes.
Then there's the bigger one that they've got brewing in the background, the $3.5 trillion one that they're going to try to jam through soon. Whether it's that, whether it's this Afghanistan issue, whether it's standing up to the Chinese Communist Party, whether it's the border crisis, all these other things, whether it's the economy, I think we really need people, courageous leaders who are actually going to take a stand on these things. And I think that if you look at people's records, you know, and again, you compare your record where you've actually gone through the fire with these people. You've gone through the fire, Governor Greitens, with these people versus somebody like Schmidt's record, where he literally was selling out Missouri to China. I think the choice is clear, and I think that that debate needs to play out over the course of this next year. But the point here is that. We need, when the day comes after these midterm elections, we need strong leaders in the United States Senate and the House if we're going to stop these guys and change the trajectory here. Because people are telling us, I mean, we're getting calls into the show. People are saying, they feel like they live in the twilight zone. They're shocked at how quickly things are declining in this country. We need to turn that around, and that means we need bold, courageous leaders to do it.
You're exactly right, Matt. We need bold, courageous leaders. This is a time of crisis in the country, and there's a time for patriots across the country to stand up, to get involved. I will say, Matt, if folks want to join our team, if they want to become part of our fight, come on out, join us at ericgreitens.com. It's EricGreitens.com. I can tell you, I know I was a boxer. You can take a punch, but come on back. You can lose a round, but you can come back and win the fight. I know from my time as a Navy SEAL, things can get hard, things can get difficult, things can get dark. But if we all come together, if every American who's listening to your show, Matt, right now, you have so many patriots who are out there who hear you. If those patriots stand up and they say, this is my country, I'm taking it back, together we can revive this republic. It's going to take strong, courageous leadership, and I'm honored to fight with all of the patriots who listen to you every week.
All right, Governor Eric Greitens from the great state of Missouri. I hope Missouri is listening up here because this is an important race and this is a very important thing. There's a reason why we keep having Governor Greitens on. Sir, I really want to thank you for joining us here on Breitbart News Saturday. Let's stay in touch. And again, give out that website. Where can people go to learn more about you and get involved if they so choose?
Yes, sir. Guys, come on out to ericgreitens.com. It's EricGreitens.com. Honored to fight beside you to take back our country. Thank you so much, Mr. Boyle. Appreciate you, sir.
All right. Thank you, sir.